and he's with me today, and I'm really excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Madhav.
Yeah, for sure. Ryan, so an interesting thing was, I was kind of looking around, and it seems like you're about to complete 2 decades in marketing. Is that correct?
I guess that is correct. Yeah, I hadn't realized that was coming up.
Oh my God. So that's a pretty long time, right? So I think let's just start out by just kind of saying, kind of exploring. You've been in marketing for almost 20 years, right? So what have been like your top 3 lessons? And I know this is a very general question, but like what have been like the most breakthrough learnings for you in the last 20 years in marketing?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's really fair. I think that marketing for me has proven to be um, much much less about data and technology and um, sophistication, attribution, and much more about storytelling and people and empathy than I would have expected. That maybe is one of my biggest lessons, one of my most surprising lessons. Um, I think also there's one thing that has consistently surprised me is that um, people are influenced by their surroundings and their circumstances and the systems in which they operate and the systems that are built around them, far more than they are, let's see, groups of people are more influenced by the situations that they're in versus their own sort of personal ability to change those circumstances and situations. And yeah, I think that 20 years ago, I would have said, oh, well, if a group of people is acting in this way, it is because that group of people is comprised of individuals who have these beliefs or biases or whatever qualities, positive or negative, traits, positive or negative. And now I realize that's not true. That's totally false, right? That you can take groups of people and scientists have all the time, right? And cultures have all the time, societies have all the time, change the circumstances around them, change the systems around them, change the incentives around them, economic and social and otherwise, change the groups around them, and they change too, right? That they are,
Mhm.
people are in groups are extraordinarily malleable and change according to the circumstances that are surrounding. And then I think um, the third one is that uh, the the power to affect those systems and decisions is in the hands of a very small number of people, and that really surprises me as well. Um, I think it's remarkable to think that you change Facebook's leadership. Literally, you just change Mark Zuckerberg into the other co-founder, and probably the whole planet looks very different, right? You know, um,
Mhm.
you change Bill Gates into someone else, and the whole planet looks very different. You change Larry and Sergey into a couple of different people, and the whole planet looks different. Same is probably true of just a few people, right? I think if you don't have Barack Obama, you have a very different United States. You have a very different world. If you don't have Donald Trump, you have a very different United States. You have a very different. So just like it's shocking the degree to which a few people, yeah, very small number of people control how everything works. And then I think that, yeah, maybe if I got a fourth one, it would be uh, people like to think things are simple, that there are simple problems to solutions. And in fact, everything is very complicated.
Okay, interesting.
So
I mean,
those are my big marketing lessons.
it is interesting. Let's kind of talk about the first thing, right? Why do you feel that storytelling is kind of like more important? Like, it's probably the most important thing over like data and analytics and everything. Like, there was kind of like a wave in marketing that kind of came in, I think, last decade for about 5 6 years, where everyone was pretty focused on like, data driven experiments. Growth hacking is all about that, behind data and kind of making more informed decisions. And there's always a lot of people who are like, oh, there's no way to validate kind of like the ROI of billboards or something like that, right?
Right.
Which did make sense a little bit there, right? So so why do you feel that storytelling is bigger than all of that?
I mean, it's not just storytelling, it's emotion and being able to create resonant experiences and to have messages that spread. But I think the reason behind that is because we as human beings are terrible at processing and changing our decision making, especially as consumers, based on large scale logical explanations. And we are really, really good at changing our decision making when there is one story that we resonate with, right? That we can
Mhm.
recall and identify with, and that we can sort of tell other people that, and everyone shares the knowledge of that story. I think this is why so much of classic advertising still works. This is why political advertising, doesn't give you a bunch of statistical data that's like, well, here's what's happened since this person's election or that mayor's election, or this is what the town of Seattle has been experiencing, and this is why you should re-elect this person, or stop elect. No, you don't do any of that, right? And that's not why anybody votes, and that's not why anyone chooses what to vote for. And voting is a very pure sort of a way to analyze marketing, right? And what works and what doesn't. So I like examples like that. But brands are this way too, right? The story around Coca-Cola or Pepsi, the story around Nike or Reebok or Adidas, the story around this football team, that tennis player, that this technology product, that technology product. We're having this conversation on Zoom, right?
Yeah.
Why not Skype? Why not Microsoft Teams? Why not Google Meet? Why not 50,000 other right products? Zoom was right place, right time, right sort of story. The features are interchangeable with pretty much all those other ones, but
Mm-hmm.
hey, right? The story and the timing, it played out really well. Nailed some branding, right? We heard years ago about, oh yeah, a lot of people are having better experience with bandwidth on Zoom than they are on whatever Skype or what have you. And so that story sticks in our head. Maybe it's not true anymore. Doesn't
Right.
matter, right? It doesn't
Yeah,
matter. That
yeah,
story
yeah, yeah.
stuck in our head. That's why we stick with it.
Yeah, the political campaigns example is a really interesting one. Yeah, I mean, they don't really track the numbers, but I mean, clearly have an effect. So it's a pretty interesting insight. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Like one of
So,
the things that always fascinates me is if you ask voters, right? If you say, "Hey, tell me things that you care about," right? What are sort of the issues that you care about, and then sort of how do you think those things have performed over the last whatever? And basically, they will first identify with their political side, with their tribe, right? Because tribalism plays a huge role, and then the numbers that they give you, the data that they give you, the stories that they tell you, those are all representative of reinforcing which team they're on, nothing to do with reality or truth,
mhm.
right? And so, and it's very much, it's not about improving their life or the life of the people around them. It's not about solving a problem in their neighborhood, their community, with their business. People are willing to take on huge sacrifices, right? I'm willing to
Yeah.
sacrifice tons of my own dollars. I'm willing to, see terrible things happen to my whatever healthcare system in exchange for me getting to side with my tribe.
Mhm.
That's really weird. It doesn't make any sense, but it speaks to the power of storytelling and marketing, the power of being part of a group.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And the interesting thing was that I think even at Moz, I mean, after many, many years, you kind of built this tribe, this community that was like
Yeah.
incredibly like I've heard so many of these, every nook and corner of SEO professionals like, oh, you know what? I learned about SEO through that Moz course and everything. It's pretty interesting how that happened. But do you feel that building like a tribe and everything. Moz had a pretty interesting tribe and everything, but do you think that that over time converted well in terms of business outcomes? Or was that like
Yeah, I would say for the first, for the first 7 or 8 years of the company's life as a software product, it worked tremendously well,
Mhm,
right? So 2007 to about 2014, those were remarkable growth years, right? Moz was growing faster and getting bigger than any of its competitors. And then I think in a lot of ways, Moz lost the storyline, right? That
mhm,
um, the community aspect of it became um, was not about the product,
mhm,
right? It sort of
mhm.
never transitioned from being about the education and the content into the product itself. And also, I think that Moz tried to make its story something else, right? Moz wanted to try and shift the story from, hey, we're not just SEO, we want to help with all these marketing things. And so then it became, oh, well, you're not my tribe anymore, right? You're not my community. You want to be email marketing and content marketing, social media marketing, and all these different things. And what is okay? So where's my community now? Where's my SEO world? Oh, well, maybe it's SEMrush or Ahrefs or one of these other players, right? Maybe it's Search Engine Journal. That's where I'll go and get my information, or Search Engine Land, or SE Roundtable, or Twitter, or, whatever it is, right? And so I think a lot of that momentum that had been built around the community was lost when Moz tried to go from, hey, we're gonna tell this one story about helping this group of people, and we are always on their side and their team, to, oh, well, you're too small for us. You're too small a community. We need to
Yeah,
go bigger than you. That's not a story that resonates.
yeah. 100% agree on that. So like, I mean, so now you've got like this your new venture SparkToro, and I was kind of trialing it. Beautifully done, lots of great insights.
Oh, thanks.
And so it was interesting to see now that, I mean, I think SparkToro is almost about 2 years old right now, right?
So it was founded, yeah, 2 years ago.
Okay.
It's not even 2 months old as a product.
Okay.
Yeah, we only launched in April 22nd, we launched.
Okay, got it. So, all right. But then I remember, I think in the last 2 years, probably like once, I don't know, a quarter or something, you'd publish this study about, clicks or all of that. I mean, you had a lot of interesting content, right? So how are you kind of going ahead with SparkToro, in terms of like these learnings about storytelling? Like how you proceeding with it, how you kind of building a story to kind of, you know, like let SparkToro kind of become the thing that it's supposed to be.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that we want to do with SparkToro is stay much more focused around what the product is, right? So, which means having to say no to a lot of things. Like, we're not going to
Yeah.
become that. We're not going to serve this audience, right? We're not going to serve all these use cases. We're going to be very specific about exactly what we do and why and how. And then a lot of the content that I've been creating and writing, so about the data about sort of loss of opportunity in SEO, about the challenges with ranking in Google and competing against Google themselves, around the tech monopolies sort of exercising their power in certain ways, around the challenging duopoly of Facebook and Google's ads. A lot of that is talking about the problems that made me want to create SparkToro,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the reason the company exists in a big way is, hey, this Google Facebook duopoly in terms of advertising and control of the web is incredibly frustrating for a ton of reasons, but for advertisers and marketers in particular, organic and paid, it really reduces your ability to have a competitive advantage through
Yeah.
creative forms of marketing, right? Because Facebook and Google won't tell you anymore which publications and people and sources and podcasts are influential to which audiences, right? They used to do that through a little bit through the old Google AdSense interface and through Facebook's audience insights tools for pages and through Facebook ads. And then they've pulled back, making more and more of that data opaque, hard to get, intentionally so, right? So that you spend all your money with them, They don't want you to go find the podcasts that reach your audience and form a relationship directly. They want you to have to go through their advertising services. So natural result of capitalism, but SparkToro is trying to disrupt that. We're trying, right? We're trying to bring that data back to marketers and advertisers. And as a result, talking about that story, right? Setting up the data and the storytelling so that a marketer can convincingly walk into a boardroom, an executive team, go talk to their CMO, go talk to their client and say, hey, we're spending $100,000 a month with these two companies. Maybe we should take a small portion of that and see what our return would be if we did some creative forms of marketing by going directly to the places that reach our customers.
Yeah.
And my opinion is, not only is that a win for marketers, that's also a win for the economy as a whole, right? Because what you don't want, the worst thing you can have in a mature, developed economy is monopoly power and control by a few entities instead of a widely distributed group, thousands and millions and tens of millions, hopefully, of companies and individuals with parity of power. Right?
Yeah.
That's how you build a robust, fair, equitable world. That's how you create opportunities for startups and new entrepreneurs. That's how you make sure that, it's not just whatever rich old white guys who keep getting more and more money extracting more and more money out of the economy, and everybody else kind of suffers. And unfortunately, right, you can see that in the United States as well. I think less so in other places, but certainly here. And yeah, so we're trying to tell all those stories and in our own tiny little way, make a difference and change it.
That's an interesting insight. So do you feel that with SparkToro, you're kind of trying to build a new category, or are you kind of entering an already filled category? And then is the goal with SparkToro kind of not to become 1,000 people company and kind of keep it relatively small? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah. Casey and I, Casey maybe even more so than me, really wants to keep SparkToro relatively small, right? So maybe it'll be, in a few years, maybe it'll be 10 or 20 or 30 people, but hundreds or thousands is not of interest to us. And also, right, I think that in terms of the vision for what we want to, for who we want to help, right, who we want to serve, it's very much small and medium businesses, right? So a lot of our customers right now are small and mid-sized agencies, individual consultants. That's about 50%, and the other 50% is small to mid-sized brands, right? Brands, consumer and B2B. It's almost half and half now that are between 5 and 100 employees, most of them. So a lot of small and mid-sized businesses, I think, because they're the ones who are nimble enough to make those choices, right? It's pretty tough to go and convince whatever P&G or Nike or Apple, hey, maybe you should go experiment in these, whatever, sponsoring some podcast or finding some social account to help promote your piece, or going and finding some place to go do a guest editorial. That's not it doesn't work for them, right?
Yeah.
They're too big, it doesn't move their needle. But, if you're selling bone broth out of Austin, Texas, and, whatever, 10 more customers next month makes a big difference for you. Hey,
yeah,
right? SparkToro can help you move that needle a lot.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I think with all of these big companies with enterprise deals, it's just, they require white labeling and customizations and multi-month negotiations and everything. So it's probably not.
We don't have any salespeople, right? So it's funny actually, Madhav. I got a couple emails in the last couple of days from folks who were like, "Hey, can you give us a sales demo?" And my response was, "Sure, but I don't have any sales people, and there's no formal way, right? You can try it out for free." And I think they were both surprised. Oh, I can just try the product, me, the person. I go to the website and try the product. Huh, how cool is that? Right? And, there's a lot of enterprises that just aren't used to that.
Yeah, it is interesting. And like I remember when I was like checking out the product, you had a beautiful, like almost kind of like the the whiteboard thing instructional video. And it was just
Yeah.
so interesting and unique, but it didn't really seem like a product instructional video. It was more like, hey, I'm almost about to listen to, hey fans, like
Yeah,
that.
totally, right? Because I think Casey and I are very much driven by this idea of a human brand, a brand that that you can connect with personally. And I think that very frankly, if you're a small company and your aspirations are not to become a multi-billion-dollar unicorn,
Hmm.
that works really well, right?
Yeah.
I love working with businesses when I know the people there. Right?
Hmm.
I don't have to know them personally, but I know who they are. I can see who they really are. Right? I can go uh, follow them on Twitter. I can see their Instagram posts. They're human, right? And that
Right.
yeah, that makes me feel a lot better about the businesses I work with. I love supporting those kinds of businesses locally and nationally and internationally. Right? I'd much
Hmm.
rather stay
Yeah.
at a hotel that's owned by whatever, some family in Italy that has owned this hotel for 2 generations, 3 generations, right? I'd much rather have that than, yeah, let's go stay at another Hilton. There's nothing,
Yeah.
nothing wrong with Hilton, right? I don't have a problem with them, but it's
Yeah.
not what
Yeah. And
they
it's
don't
very
need my money, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and I absolutely love this point that you said, right? Like there doesn't need to be like this one big, company in that space. It could just be like 20 small companies kind of
Yeah.
servicing like the different niches, which is really interesting. And I think I think it'll be a good way for our industry move forward with that. But I think for you specifically, um, so you said you launched Park Toro about 2 months back. Not the ideal time to launch with the
Oh
whole
God. It's been brutal. Wow. Just really challenging.
And so it's interesting, like, you've, I think probably for a year and a half and everything, you were kind of prepping for this launch and you had no idea about this whole COVID thing. And now things have kind of, obviously the plans would have changed and everything, with how you kind of, move forward with Spark Toro in terms of like marketing it and everything, right? So what do
Yeah.
you feel are kind of like your, how's your way forward with kind of marketing Spark Toro, during this crisis, after this crisis, and where do you feel that marketing is kind of going for the next 1 or 2 years?
Yeah. So I think in the short term, right, the last 3, 4 months, and probably the next at least 6 to 9, we're going to see considerably lower demand, definitely a lower tolerance for spending money. Right. There's a lot of businesses and a lot of consumers that just don't have the capital that they had. They don't have the cash. They don't have the demand on the customer side or on the B2B side. And so as a result, conversion rates are lower. Um, the lifetime value tends to be less. The amount people are willing to spend is lower. And so I think that for a lot of businesses, us included, many of our investments have to balance this idea of, hey, I need to convert some customers now. I need to be able to stay alive and survive and thrive. So I've got to keep my own expenses low. But also, I want to invest in creating future demand, right? Because I think one thing we know from every cycle like this one is that there is an eventual recovery, and
Hmm.
I think it's going to be better in a lot of places than it is in the U.S. because it looks like the U.S. is opening up too soon, and so we're going to get another wave, and then demand will drop even further. A lot of people will be really scared, which is terrifying, right? But the yeah, I think as a business owner, you just have to be real about it. And then the answer for us is let's do both, right? Let's try and work on who can we help now, right? Who has demand up because of quarantine? What are businesses that are doing well in this space? How can we help and serve them, right? And charge money and make a real product there and survive. And then also for everyone else, right? For people whose demand is down and for who don't have the bandwidth to invest, can we help them survive and thrive for free? Right?
Hmm.
Can we do more? Can we provide more of our product for free? And can we provide more educational content? And can we serve them in other kinds of ways that will help them? And then when they have the dollars in the future, And when they have the need, they'll become customers as well, right? So pent up future demand, I think, is a huge investment that we're making, and it's something I would urge every other marketer to invest in as well.
Interesting. Okay. So like when you kind of, I'm curious right now, like with SparkToro as a team right now, you guys, like, have you been remote or do you work in an office? Like, what's your setting like right now?
Yeah, you
I
can
mean,
see
I
I'm
mean,
in a garden shed out back of my house. That's where I work out of.
okay.
And actually, this is where I've been working all through SparkToro's life. And Casey works from his house, which is I think he's probably about 35, 40 miles from here. So in the Seattle area, but not Seattle proper.
Okay.
And yeah, we've been remote the whole time. And so quarantine, weirdly enough, other than sort of taking away our ability to get together every couple of weeks in person, hasn't been too bad. Hasn't changed us up. I do expect that, I think everyone's talking about this, right? That a lot of businesses that previously said, hey, we can't go remote, are going to go remote. I think a lot of people, a lot of human beings are going to be looking for remote jobs. And I think that there will be a much greater tolerance by businesses of many, many different kinds who never considered it before to hire remote workers. And that will mean that there'll be a lot more distributed opportunity as well. Right? I think that many more people will be willing to work with employees, outside their countries, outside their time zones, outside their cities and states. And that's I think a really positive thing, right? I would love to see that distribution grow dramatically. I think there's, especially in the knowledge economy, there's a ton of opportunity that's untapped because people are obsessed with geography when they shouldn't be.
Yeah, 100% agree. And so, Bert, like at Moz specifically, I mean, you were, I think, working, I'm not sure, but I think you were working out of the office for almost 16, 17 years, right? So it was a immediate transition to remote, right? Was it difficult for you? Did it come naturally? And like, did you face any specific challenges, going from working with teammates in an office to just going 100% remote?
No, I got so much more productive. Oh my God. So, okay, first off, I want to be kind and respectful of the fact I don't have any children, right? Geraldine and I
Okay.
have no kids. So I think it's really, really different for people who have kids and those kids, aren't going to school. And so their, parents are having to homeschool. I think for those folks, the stress is super intense. The productivity, you cannot ask them to be as productive as they were when they were going into an office and their kids had, school to go to and after school programs and all that kind of stuff, like completely different. But for me personally, I can get done in a day what would take me 3 to 5 at Moz, literally, right? Because it's just me in my office doing the work, right?
Right.
And so the all of the levels of communication, layers of communication, of getting permission, of getting approval, of surfacing an idea, and then having a bunch of people give feedback on the idea. All that process stuff is gone, right? I have an idea. I want to see it executed in the product. All I have to do is convince Casey. That's it. I have one person to convince, myself and Casey, right? That's it. Then we're done. And then if it works, right, that goes live in the product, and users get a better experience, and our product gets better, and we have more success. And that is that's really meaningful, right? That style of working is far, far better for me. I don't need the social interaction. I don't need the whatever water cooler thing. And I'm very lucky, right? I have folks like you who email me and are like, hey, let's have a chat. And so I get to have wonderful conversations like this one, right, with people all over the world. And I maintain a lot of that just naturally through how my job and work function. So I'm blessed, right? I'm really lucky.
Yeah. No, I'm really like, I think you've been very kind with everyone, just kind of agreeing to get on everyone's podcast. That's been pretty awesome of you. But I've also seen a lot of marketing leaders kind of have this rhetoric where they're saying that they want their team like around them, kind of in an office, just because, they want, like, unless, I mean, they find it difficult to work and everything. Which is, yeah, which is a little, I don't know, it could have a point, but it's interesting how some people prefer that
Yeah,
as well.
whenever I hear that, I worry that it is more perception and a desire for control than it
Yeah.
is actually a fundamental necessity. And I want to be empathetic to the fact that some people really do work better in offices. I think, some of it is how much space do you have at home, and can that space be quiet and private, and can it be functional for you? That's certainly challenging, especially in big cities where apartment sizes are tiny, and you know there's lots of demand. So yeah, I have empathy there. At the same time, I think that it's probably not a good idea to force everyone to fit your model, right? So
Hmm.
if Casey and I were doing more hiring, more substantial hiring, we would probably look to either try and find people who work really well remotely, right? We would
Hmm.
look for people who want that kind of culture, who love it, or we would look to also have some physical office somewhere
Hmm.
where people could go for people who that works better for.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, okay. I know I went a little bit outside of our conversation.
No, that's fine.
But then, so, we were talking about predictions and everything, and, you see the demand being a little subdued and everything, at least for the next 6 7 months, and then focusing on like the big wins. Now, I think it was a couple of weeks back, I kind of read this beautiful article that he wrote on SparkToro about marketing flywheels, kind of like, and it's kind of like something that's echoing across everywhere. Everyone's like, like, uh, fun, the time of funnels are over, it's the time of flywheels. It's kind of like, and interestingly, like, there's this growth program that, I attended like earlier this year, which is called Reforge, by Brian
Hmm.
Balfour, right? And I mean, it's almost like every 5 or 10 minutes the same rhetoric keeps coming in, like, loops not funnels, loops not funnels.
Hmm.
So it's interesting that, a lot of people are now you're thinking around marketing flywheels. So just thought that, could you kind of like give a little bit of background on like, what do you think, like, what's a marketing flywheel, how do you think with it, and why should, marketing teams kind of start pursuing marketing with a flywheel perspective than the regular funnels?
Sure. So it's weird. I have never thought about a flywheel as being in opposition to a funnel.
Okay.
Like I think of them as just two different things. I certainly think about SparkToro's, and I thought about Moz's funnel, right, as basically being, hey, people are, they go from a stage where they're aware of the company to they have problems that the company can potentially solve for them, and then they, examine the product, and they consider whether it's right for them, and then they potentially convert, and hopefully they upgrade their account over time and come back again, right? And that's the funnel. And then the flywheel is just how do we make them aware of the company, right? What are the tactics that work together in concert to get to this level of they're aware of us, they come visit us, they come check out our product, right? How do we get people into that part of our funnel? And
Hmm.
that is where I find the flywheel analogy so useful, right? The idea that I make an investment, that each time I make it, whatever it is, right, whatever marketing thing I do, it gets easier and easier each time I do it, or it gets cheaper and cheaper each time I do it,
Hmm.
or it returns more and more each time I do it, and hopefully all three of those.
Right.
Right? The ideal flywheel is I do a marketing thing, and every time I do it, it gets a little easier. I get more out of it. It becomes cheaper.
Hmm.
Boom, right? Like that's
Yeah.
that's just a huge win, and that's really different than thinking about marketing as just a series of tactics and channels that I invest in as long as they're ROI positive.
Right.
Right? So that's kind of the Gary Vaynerchuk like omni-channel approach. I try and be everywhere, and I'm across every platform, and oh, there's people on TikTok. That means I'm on TikTok. What the heck are people going to do with SparkToro on TikTok? And I don't like it, and I'm not good at it, and I don't have interest in it. So should I really be there? Are you sure that's right? As opposed to, what if there's only one or two things that
Right.
I'm really good at, that I can do again and again and again? And every time I strike that iron, right, it produces additional returns, right? So every time I do some press and PR, more people, more journalists and writers become aware of my brand, and now they're going to cite me again in the future. And I grow my presence with that world, and that media reaches more people, and then those reporters go on to other places, and it becomes a cycle, right? And oh
Hmm.
wow, yeah, everybody's writing about SparkToro, and now it feels like the ball, it goes from a little tiny snowball to a big, gigantic boulder that's rolling down the hill.
Yeah.
All right, beautiful, right? That kind of flywheel is what I'm looking to create. But the flywheel fills my funnel.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right here. So right now, what's kind of like the number one flywheel for SparkToro?
Yeah, for us, it is free account usage and email. So, which is really different from what I did at Moz, right? So Moz,
Hmm.
Moz was, I blogged, I did content marketing, I did Whiteboard Friday, I ranked in Google with SEO, right, for keywords, and then I got traffic to the site, and some of those people would go check out the product, and that's how we got, customers and free trials. And
Hmm.
with SparkToro, it's very much I I go and talk about the product in different places. I do a little bit of content, but it's not very SEO driven because, very frankly, SparkToro is not in a space that people search for, right?
Hmm.
To your point, it's
That's
sort of
true.
creating a category rather than serving existing demand. So SEO is not a great match for that. Do a lot of social media marketing. I do a lot of PR and press
Hmm.
stuff and interviews and webinars and events and all that, right? And then people hear about the product, so they go check it out from whatever source. And then when they go check it out, it's free to try. You can run a bunch of searches for free. I think we're 10 searches for free, although most people usually get 15 or 20 because we give a lot of credit
Hmm.
queries for free. And then if some of those people every day are like, oh, I need this. We're using this regularly at our whatever company, in our agency, in our marketing team, and then they sign up. So it's a different flywheel than what we used at Moz, but
Hmm.
so far has been going well. It's challenging, absolutely, right? But we're ahead of our budget, just slightly ahead of our budget, despite the fact that we launched during the pandemic. So we're
Yeah,
feeling pretty good about that.
that's pretty awesome. So, and you brought up an interesting thing, right? Like you're kind of building a new category, so there's not a lot of search volume as such for a
Right.
lot of the content that you write, right? There's also kind
Yeah.
of like a trade-off here, right? So, for example, you're writing a lot of, let's say, a lot of thought leadership content, right? And then there's SEO focused content, right? There's often the question where, like, how do you kind of get traffic to your thought leadership content, right? The problem with content promotion, all of these things, is that you do a little bit of it, it's going to increase a little bit and then die down. While
Yeah.
with SEO and all of these things, it's kind of like compounding it. It's slow and steady, but then over time it grows. And
Yeah.
so
It builds a
people are
flywheel.
yeah, exactly, right. So and then people are kind of like then kind of thinking that, does it make sense? Even personally for me, right, like I've always seen that when you kind of write thought leadership content, it's great, everybody reads it, some people share it, everything, right? But the amount of like coverage that you get from search and everything is really less, because there's no volume, maybe you didn't do any of that volume, right?
Right.
So how would you kind of like deal with that? Like you can like right now you've got like, I don't know, 8, 10, 20 pieces which are like really really well written thought leadership pieces in your content, sorry, on your blog. But then there's a very likely chance they're not going to kind of like get a lot of SEO traffic and everything.
Right.
So is it something that's kind of like echoing in an empty chamber, or is there more to it?
Yeah, so for me, the flywheel portion of that, rather than relying on Google to be the traffic, the overtime traffic driver, it still is, right? I still get
Hmm.
some of that. But the big overtime traffic driver that I'm hoping to build is subscriptions, email subscriptions, right? People
Hmm.
go to the blog, they're like, oh, this stuff is really good. And if they see that twice or 3 times or 4 times, and they're like, oh man, every time this guy's putting out a blog post, I feel like I should be reading it. So they subscribe. So they subscribe via email, right? And that's where the thought leadership comes into play, right? Because the way that you win in the non-SEO content game, right? Whether you call it thought leadership or you just sort of call it, whatever, sort of high quality, high signal to noise ratio content. The way that you win there is people subscribe to your blog, right? So every time we have a few, I want to say it's somewhere between 5,000 and 8,000 email subscribers right now who basically like get the post via email when I publish a new one. And so my goal is essentially keep those people subscribed by putting out content regularly enough that they stay interested, but not so frequently that they get overwhelmed. And do it in such a way that my social channels, the sharing that people have between each other, when they email it to their friends, the amounts of traffic that Google does send me, the amplification that happens, through network distribution stuff, all of that is sending people back to either A, try the product, or B, sign up to subscribe to the emails, right? And so now I've got a flywheel, because hopefully a year from now, I'll have 10,000 people on that email list. And so every post I send will have 2 to 3 times the amount of reach and impact, right? And so slowly, steadily building the flywheel that way.
Interesting. Okay.